You, along with 90% of other coaches and consultants, are building your personal brand the wrong way. I myself have generated over $1 million through my personal brand, which allowed me to move to Dubai and live the life that I only had on my vision board a few years ago. I made most of the mistakes when it comes to personal branding, and I'm about to share with you what I learned the hard way, what to do and what not to do. The clients I work with one-on-one today, they are really good at what they do, but they struggle to turn that expertise into content that attracts the right people and makes them an authority in the industry. Today, they're attracting inbound leads, building authority in their niche, and creating content they actually enjoy making. In this video, I'll walk you through the 5 biggest personal branding mistakes I see entrepreneurs make and how to avoid them, so that you can become known for what you do, attract the right people, generate inbound leads, instead of constantly wondering what to post, feeling like you're blending in and putting in a ton of effort without seeing results. But before we get into the 5 mistakes, I want to share something with you. Because the biggest lesson I've learned about personal branding has nothing to do with views, followers, or going viral. Some of the biggest opportunities in my life happened because the right people found my content and got to know me before we ever spoke. The business that became my coaching company and generated more than $1 million 2 years ago, that opportunity came because someone had followed my content on LinkedIn, knew my story, and believed that I was the right person. One of my best friends today was originally a customer who found me through my personal brand as well. And I even met my ex-boyfriend through my personal brand because his company wanted to work with mine. And because of all of this, I started realizing something. A personal brand is so much more than just a marketing tool. It's your reputation, it's your online CV, it's often the first impression people get of you, and the impact goes far beyond getting clients. The other thing I've noticed over the years is that almost every client I sign says some version of the same thing. I already feel like I know you, I've followed you for years, I think we are very similar, or I don't know if you remember, but we spoke a long time ago. And by the time we get on a call, the trust is already there. And that's basically what changed everything for me. I stopped looking at personal branding as something I was trying to grow as fast as possible. Instead, I started looking at it as something I'm building for life. Not something that needs to get bigger every month, but something that needs to get stronger every month. So more trust, more clarity, more authenticity, because in the end, people buy from people. And that is exactly why so much of the advice around personal branding is broken. So mistake number 1, looking for content ideas instead of clarity. The first mistake I see people make is looking for content ideas instead of clarity. They're searching for content calendars, hook frameworks, AI prompts, and a 50-day content plan. They think that if they can just find the right strategy, content will finally feel easy. But it won't. Because content strategy cannot solve a clarity problem. And honestly, I understand why people do this. It's because it's uncomfortable to admit that the real problem might not be your content. The real problem might be that you're unclear. Unclear on who you're here to help, unclear on what you want to be known for, unclear on what makes your perspective different. And it's so much easier to look for another content strategy than it is to answer those questions. And I know this because I still catch myself falling into this trap from time to time. There are periods where I sit down to create content and think, oh my God, what should I post? I don't know. I really don't know. My head is just empty for ideas. And almost every time, it's not because I've run out of ideas actually, it's because I've lost clarity. Maybe I'm unclear on who I'm trying to help. Maybe I'm unclear on the direction I'm taking my business. Maybe I'm unclear on what I want to be known for. And whenever that happens, content becomes difficult. Not because I'm suddenly less creative, but because I don't have a clear message to communicate. And the opposite is also true. Whenever I'm crystal clear on who I help, what I help them with, what I want to stand for, content becomes significantly easier. It's funny how that works. The ideas come naturally, the content feels more authentic, and I no longer have to force it. So instead of asking yourself, what should I post? Then start asking yourself, who are you here to help? What problem do I solve? What do I believe that most people in my industry don't? And what do I want people to think of when they hear my name 3 years from now? Because once you're clear on those things, content becomes so much simpler. You're no longer trying to fill a content calendar. You're simply basically just communicating ideas that you genuinely believe in. For example, 1 year ago, most people knew me as the girl who taught appointment setting to other women. Today, that is not what I want to be known for. Today, I want to be known for helping entrepreneurs build businesses and personal brands around who they are, that they actually enjoy running. And once I got clear on that, content became significantly easier because I wasn't trying to come up with content ideas anymore. I was simply sharing what I genuinely believe. And that's the shift. The people with the strongest personal brands aren't the people with the most content ideas. They're the people with the most clarity and conviction in who they are and what they're here to do. Because once you know what you stand for, content becomes the easy part. Mistake number 2, building a persona instead of being yourself. The second mistake I see people making is building a persona instead of building a personal brand. They think they need to become the authority, look more successful, sound more confident, and act more polished. So they create a version of themselves they believe people will respect. And at first, it might work because building a persona feels safe. A persona is controlled, predictable. You know exactly what to say, how to show up, and what image you're trying to create. And if we're being honest, the industry encourages it. Be the expert, be the authority, position yourself as the person who has it all figured out. So people start building brands around who they think they should be rather than who they actually are. I know because I did this myself. I built a persona once and for a while it worked. I knew exactly what to say, how to sound, what version of myself to show up as, and it felt super powerful. It felt controlled. And then it became a prison. Because the problem with creating a persona is that eventually you have to maintain it. You have to keep showing up as that version. You have to keep saying the things that version would say. And the moment you grow, the moment you change, the moment you want to talk about something that doesn't fit the character you've built, you're stuck. You either break the brand or you stop being yourself. And that is exhausting. Not just logistically, but emotionally. Because you're performing every single time you post, and performance is just not sustainable. The other problem is that people can feel it. Of course they can. They can feel when something isn't genuine, when something sounds right instead of being true. And right now, people are tired of that. They've seen enough expert, enough gurus, enough people pretending to have all the answers. What people crave now is what they can actually relate to, someone they can trust, and someone they can see themselves in. So stop trying to become the authority and start becoming more of yourself. The strongest personal brands aren't built around a character, they're built around a person, a real one, someone who evolves, changes their mind, makes mistakes, learns lessons, and talks about it openly. Because that's what creates trust, not perfection, not positioning, trust. And trust is what ultimately drives opportunities, relationships, and clients. And the funny thing is that the more you try to look impressive, the harder it actually becomes for people to connect with you. And the more willing you are to be yourself, the more people trust you. Most people think that authenticity will make them look less credible. In reality, it usually makes them more credible because people don't buy from the most perfect person. They buy from the person they believe and trust, and the only version of yourself that you will be able to sustain for the next 10 years. That is the real one. Mistake number 3, thinking too short term. The third mistake I see people make is treating their personal brand a bit like a campaign. Post for 30 days and watch your personal brand blow up. Post for 60 days and evaluate the results. And post for 90 days. And if it's not working, try a different strategy. And that's exactly why so many people quit before anything meaningful happens. Because a personal brand is not a campaign. A personal brand is a reputation. And reputations don't compound in 30 days. They compound over years. We're so used to think in short-term results. We launch something, we run ads, we send emails, and we expect feedback almost immediately. And that's how most marketing works. So it's kind of fair that people think this way. But the problem is that people apply the same thinking to personal branding. They expect a fully built personal brand after a few months of posting. Thousands of followers, inbound leads, authority in their niche. And when that doesn't happen fast enough, they assume that the strategy isn't working. So they switch, and then switch again, and then switch again, never staying consistent long enough for anything to actually compound. I started building my personal brand when I was 16 years old, when I started my first company and I began sharing my journey online. And looking back, some of the biggest opportunities in my life came from that decision. Not because I went viral, not because I had some perfect content strategy, and not because I found some secret growth hack, but because I kept showing up year after year. And the longer I did it, the more it compounded. My personal brand helped me build a coaching business that generated more than $1 million. It introduced me to business partners, clients, friends, and opportunities I never could have predicted. Not because of a 90-day sprint, but because of years of consistency. This shift basically happened when I stopped thinking about my personal brand as something I was trying to grow and started thinking about it as something I was building. Because your personal brand is your reputation. It's your online CV. It's the first thing people see when they search for your name. And it's what people meet before they ever meet you. And in a world that have become increasingly online, that matters more than anything else almost. For your career, for your business, for your opportunities, for everything. So stop asking, how do I grow my personal brand in the next 60 days? And start asking, what reputation am I building over the next 10 years? Because that's the game that you're actually playing. And does that mean that you post for 10 years without seeing results? Of course not. You'll see results along the way, but when you stop expecting massive outcomes overnight, something interesting happens. You stop quitting, you stop constantly changing strategies, you stop chasing the next shortcut, and you finally stay in the game long enough for the work to compound. Nobody says, I went to the gym for 45 days and it didn't work. Because everybody understands that fitness doesn't work that way. You don't go from overweight to a six-pack in 6 weeks. So why do we expect a personal brand to happen faster? Lower your expectations on the timeline and raise your expectations for your own consistency. Do the reps, keep showing up, and you'll get there far more reliably than the person chasing a 30-day miracle. Mistake number 4. The fourth mistake I see people make is chasing virality. They think building a personal brand is about becoming as big as possible. More followers, more views, more search, more attention. And if your goal is simply getting recognition or becoming an influencer, then that is completely fine. Optimize for views, chase virality, and go for it. But if your goal is to build an actual business, you need to think a bit differently. Because virality feels like progress. A post blows up, the views go up, the followers go up, the likes go up, and for a moment it feels like you're winning. The problem is that views are visible, trust isn't, and authority isn't, and relationships aren't. So people end up measuring the wrong thing. They measure success by how many people saw their content instead of how many of the right people paid attention to it. And I have experienced this myself. I had posts perform incredibly well with thousands of views, hundreds of comments, lots of engagement, and sometimes absolutely nothing came from it. No clients, no opportunities, and no meaningful conversations. On the other hand, I have had posts that weren't viral at all, but they attracted exactly the right people. People who became clients, people who followed my work for years, and people who reached out and said, I've been following you for a long time and I'm finally ready to work with you. And that taught me something super important, because the posts that grew my ego was rarely the posts that grew my business. The shift is simple. Stop asking how many people saw this and start asking, did the right people see this? Because the right 100 people following you are worth infinitely more than the wrong 10,000. So better people beats more people every single time. A personal brand isn't built by attracting everyone. It's built by attracting the people who genuinely resonate with your message, the people you actually want to work with, the people who you trust, and the people who stick around. So when you stop optimizing for reach and start optimizing for trust, everything changes. Because your content becomes more authentic, your audience becomes higher quality, your leads becomes warmer, and your business becomes more predictable. Because views do not pay your bills. Trust us. So stop stressing over how many people are watching and start paying attention to who is watching, because that's where the real opportunities they come from. Mistake number 5. Trying to look professional. The fifth mistake I see people make is thinking their content isn't working because it's not polished enough. They think, if I just had a better camera, if I was better at editing or had an editor, if my content looked more professional, then people would finally take me seriously. But that's usually not the problem, or almost never the problem. I would dare to say never the problem, because people don't connect with perfection. They connect with people. And the more perfect you try to appear, the harder it becomes for someone to see themselves in you. And this isn't really about production quality of your content. It's more about what you're willing to share, what you're willing to admit, how much of yourself you're actually willing to show, the mistakes you've made, the lessons you've learned, and the challenges you've faced. Because everyone talks about authenticity, but very few people are actually willing to be authentic. And my approach is very simple. I do not try to look perfect. I just try to be very, very real. That doesn't mean sharing every detail of your life. It simply means letting people see the person behind the expertise. Because people aren't just buying information, they're buying trust. And trust is built through honesty, not perfection. So think about the people you trust most online. It's usually not the person who appears flawless, it's the person who feels believable. The person who makes you think, I've felt that too, or that sounds exactly like me. And this is also why before someone believes you can help them get to where they want to go, they need to believe you understand where they are today. And they can't do that if you're hiding behind a perfect image. So the goal is not to look professional, the goal is to look believable and relatable. Because when you stop trying to be perfect, creating content becomes so much easier. There is no pressure then, and people connect with you faster, your audience trusts you more, and your personal brand becomes far more sustainable, because perfection is exhausting and being yourself isn't. So if you are trying to build a personal brand and getting zero results, then remember this. Stop looking for content ideas and start with clarity, always. Stop building a persona and start being yourself. Stop treating your brand like a campaign and start thinking long-term. Stop chasing virality and start focusing on quality over quantity. And stop trying to look professional. Just be real. If you are watching this and thinking, okay, I get it, but honestly, I still have no idea what I should be posting, then chances are your problem isn't content. It's clarity. Clarity on what you're here to do and who you should be online, and how to turn your expertise into content that actually attracts the right people. Because the truth is, most coaches, consultants, and agency owners don't have a content problem. They have a positioning problem. And if that is you, then send me a DM on Instagram. Tell me a bit about your business and where you feel stuck. I read every message myself, and if I think I can help, I'll point you in the right direction. And with that said, thank you for watching.